Welcome to my mother's garage. I just got the VoltBike Enduro, one of the most affordable full suspension mountain bikes that I've ever seen, with electric drive system, got mid-drive, mid-mounted battery. Enduro is a bit misleading. This is a type of mountain bike racing where you have timed downhill sections, so you're trying to go fast downhill, and then not timed uphill sections, although there may be like an overall time limit to the race. Regardless, downhill racing, okay? $1,800, you're getting what for me is an excellent, like, urban, fun, occasional trail riding bike that's gonna be more comfortable because it's front and rear suspension. But this rear suspension, I mean, I have not tested this bike yet. Just the design of it, that suspension component, I've never heard of the brand there. Even the front fork, I mean, this is SR Suntour XCT. I believe this is a coil fork, and it does have lockout, but it doesn't have the same kind of clicker adjustment or air sag tuning that you get on a true hardcore mountain bike. And that's because it's like less than half the price. What I was really impressed with, however, is the packaging. So if you look at this box, you know, it's extra wide, and it had styrofoam on both sides, as well as on top of and below the tires on both sides. And that is remarkable. You know, maybe it should be the norm, but most of the time when I get bikes shipped to me, either because they're only sold online, like VoltBike, or because I'm doing a review for a big company and they're like, yeah, we want to time this with the launch and everything. Usually it just comes in a much like thinner box without the big extra foam. Sometimes there's foam a little bit at the ends, but usually not sandwich. So that's impressive. It looks like the bike's in great shape. I'm going to unpackage this the rest of the way. Of course, I'm going to weigh this. I'm going to go through all the tests I normally do. I'm very excited. A bunch of people have asked about this bike. You know, these guys, along with Rad Power Bikes, along with, you know, several other online-only companies, you're sort of just like winging it, unless you know someone who's into e-bikes and you're like, what am I going to get? How's it going to work? We review these things a lot, and of course they're working with me. They sent me this bike to review. I'm going to send it back or sell it locally, but the point is they know I'm reviewing it. Hopefully yours arrives in great shape. I welcome you to chime in on the comments. That's what this is about. This isn't about like promoting one company or another. It's about hopefully getting an authentic feel for what you're going to get, and then helping each other. I've got a section in the forums now called like known issues and problems plus solutions and fixes. If you know about stuff for any brand, like chime in, help people out if you can, if you're willing to. Enough talk, let's get into it. So far, so good. You can see the charger now in the little box, the pedals. They're basic, but Wellgo branded, and make sure you put the correct side on, right to the right side, left to the left. Really beautiful accessories up here. I like these ergonomic grips, even though they don't appear to be locking. That's Sully Royale, but just really cool. Clean cockpit, rubberized grips on the brake levers. They're e-bike specific. They have a cutoff there, and the one area that I've had to screw around with is the stem and mounting that to the bar. You can see it sort of sloshing around right now back and forth. I tried to center the display, and now I'm going to center the bar. They give you this little Allen key, but look how short that is, so I'm really having to get in there carefully. You could take the display off. They give you plenty of other Allen keys. I believe that small one would be the right size. Haven't had to use any of those yet. It's a pretty good looking bike. Mine even came with partially inflated tires. You'll definitely want to check the recommended PSI on the side and get those filled up if you're going to go out riding. 40 to 65 PSI, that's pretty high. Usually on mountain bikes, especially the fatter ones, the new plus size tires, you can go a little bit lower, or if you run tubeless. This is not set up for that at all, but you know, just kind of interesting. Another telltale sign that this is a little bit more oriented towards hardpack trails, or in fact the city. Also, headlight. Very, very few like real full suspension mountain bikes would come with a headlight, but I appreciate that. Like, I'm not really complaining, just trying to kind of give you that mindset. You can see the display up here now, easily swivels forward and back, not removable. The wires are pretty clean up here. The button pad's going to be really easy to use and reach. Notice that this is a press fit connection here versus there are ones that screw together and they have like a little rubber washer like to seal it against water. This should work okay, but it's, you know, it's one of those trade-off sort of parts. I'm actually charging the battery right now. I took that off. It locks to the bike. You've got a little charger over here. It's 2 amps, which isn't especially fast, but it's working okay. And I did plug it into the battery, then into the wall second. That's the way I've been taught. I think it allows it to sort of balance with the battery versus like pop, you know, like connecting. You want to take good care of the battery, of course. Those are some of the more expensive, sensitive parts of e-bikes. So I went and got some real tools because the ones that it came with, they're okay, but I don't want to be out there testing this and have the handlebars come loose or something. So I've got my little 3-way hex, and it just gives you something bigger to hold on to, and it reaches deeper than that little one we had before. I've got Polylube 1000. This is just grease that I'm going to apply to that the pedal. And I did find it does have an R. There it is, R for right. So that's going to be on the right side. And then I've got a special tool that allows you to really crank the pedal and make sure that it's on. Okay. So I got on this thing, I locked out the front suspension, and I was like bouncing it up and down trying to actuate that rear suspension, and I was like, man, this thing sucks. Like it wasn't traveling at all. It was just stiff. So I unscrewed this cap like so, and I pressed on the little valve, the inner valve piece. See that little tiny metal piece in there? It just went tss, and it just, all the air was like tss, really fast because there's not a lot of volume in there. And I was like, okay. So then I got back on it, and then it must have been kind of like frozen or just kind of connected. Maybe it's never actually been pushed on. So it went and it went and it sunk like all the way down. So now I'm going to fill it back up. The thing is, there's no directions here. You know, there's very limited, like, warning, do not open, contents under pressure, opening may cause damage or personal injury. I think that means like don't cut this thing open. You put some air pressure in here. Ideally you'd sort of sag it, which is, you know, someone's on here, you push this little rubber thing up, and then with their weight it pushes the rubber thing down, and you have some spread there. So you're like, okay, cool. You know, how much of the pressure is being used just by their body weight, because you don't want to bottom it out as I have here, like it's completely depressed or compressed. Yeah. Anyway, just kind of interesting. I hope this helps you when you're setting up your own bike. Probably will need a bicycle pump anyway to maintain the tires, but this is something you're going to have to experiment with, trial and error style, I think. And then the chain, it's really dry. You know, it came without any lubrication, and so I have this, what is this, BioGreen. I try to get sustainable bike grease and, you know, other stuff, so it's 100% plant-based. I've got the kickstand set up over on the other side. It's an adjustable length kickstand, which is really nice. So I've set it to make the bike really tall, and then I'm just going to tip like this, and it's going to free up that rear wheel so that I can pedal and cycle through the different gears and just, you know, wet this thing up a little bit. You don't want it to be dripping wet or anything. I'm actually going to run a cloth over it, but this might help reduce creaking, and it's just going to help it run smoother. One thing that I did notice, that look how short that seat post is, and that's because you'll see there's a bend in the frame. So if it was too long, short riders couldn't get it all the way down. Like, it wouldn't be able to go all the way down like that. But for me, you know, I'm 5'9", I'm not an especially tall guy, but I want it high. I want the seat like way up here. You know, it's nice that this has a sloping top tube and everything for low standover height, but when you're pedaling, you want full reach. And ideally, you'd have a dropper seat post so that you could descend and you could drop and then use your legs and kind of like bounce around on the bike like suspension, and then you'd want to raise it really high when you're climbing. That's what Enduro is about. So again, the naming here is just for fun, I think, because Enduro, you need to climb, and then you're going down, and you really don't want to be hitting your butt on the saddle, so you need that instant dropper. I know I'm getting technical here for a bike that's just a really good deal, but I think it's important to learn and know what you're getting. You know, I guess there it is, min insertion height. It's stamped onto the tube, like right there, right? You know, this is gonna have to go down all the way to there to be safe according to the stamp, and that's just really low for me. So I'm already thinking like I might want to get another seat post, and this is, I think it's 30.4. Yeah, 30.4 millimeters. Kind of a unique seat post diameter. Well, we're about 20 minutes in. Everything's looking pretty good, but that Joe Blow pump wasn't going to work because this valve is so close to the pivot arm here on the rear suspension. So thankfully, I have a hand pump that I just carry with me when I go mountain biking, and it has a narrower screw cap. They do sell suspension-specific pumps you can get, but I'm hoping this is going to work all right. Does have a little indicator on the side. Just a good chance to call these guys out. IZENDE. I got it on Amazon a while back, and I just love it. It's really compact, and this valve attachment can either do Presta or Schrader. Again, very cool just to have the pressure thing. So I'll let you know the pressure that we end up using. I got it up to 150 PSI, and that was a little stiff, so I dropped it down just using my finger, probably like 140, 130, something like that. Felt good to me. I was able to take this out just around the block and off curbs and stuff, and I could feel the suspension like it's definitely there. It's not as fluid. It does look like it's got some adjustment here, preload adjustment, but it's just not as smooth. And the stanchions are a little narrower, and it's again, I'm actually really excited about how this is going to perform, because one of the first electric bikes I ever got was a full suspension, cheaper online bike. And I think I was looking for something a lot more like this, something that could take some hits, felt good enough, big enough tires with those, knobs. That takes a lot of the vibration out of the road right there. And going over cracks and stuff, yeah, it's not going to be this like awesome, just buttery feel, but it's a lot better than a completely rigid frame. Some of the fine tuning still has to be done, but that's where the seat is supposed to be. And when I'm on that, I'm just not getting full leg extension. I'm reaching a lot, but I'm not getting full leg extension. And look at that. The saddle is already pretty far forward. You can slide it on those rails. And in fact, I've adjusted this, tried to level it a little bit more, but that's one of the ways you can, dial in a bike, is bring the saddle forward. It's just a longer frame. So, of course, I'm measuring standover height, reach, the length of the bike. All those important specs are back at the website, so you can kind of look at that, like your standover. Are you going to hit yourself on this thing? So I would probably replace that seat post, and I think it would feel a lot better. I might even replace this stem to one that's a little bit shorter, or more, a little like a steeper angle. So, yeah. I don't mean to complain. I just want to call out the differences. I mean, this is a purpose-built e-bike. You can see the cables are routed through the frame. I'm excited to weigh it later because, it did feel a little bit heavier, but at least with the mid-drive motor, a lot of that weight is low and centered. And also the axles here, they look like standard 9mm diameter skewers with quick release. So at least you get quick release. And by not using a hub motor, there's a lot less wires back here, or fewer wires, I should say. It's going to be easier and more familiar for a lot of shops to work with. Looks like we've got mechanical disc brakes, 160mm rotors. Nothing to write home about, but hey, disc brakes, if you're descending a big hill, you would prefer those over rim brakes, because rim brakes can actually heat up the rim and cause problems, potentially even pop the tire if they really heat up. But a lot of times on mountain bikes, especially e-mountain bikes, are heavier. If you use rim brakes, they're also going to grind mud and water into your rims and squeak more and just get dirtier. So disc brakes the way to go. Everything's just a little bit, very entry level. A little bit more advice for you. I was adjusting these brake levers, and the tool that came with this is just, again, cheaper part. I actually put it away because it was starting to, chunk a little bit and get messed up. So I got my park tool, and it wasn't quite the right size. I was trying to, force it. There was a little bit of slop in there. I had to break out all these other tools here. So 3/16 is the size that actually fits if you want to adjust these levers and kind of angle them up or down. You don't want to strip it and wreck your stuff. Hopefully this helps someone out. I'm trying to dial this in and actually take it off-road. It's a bummer that doesn't come with quite the right size tool, or that the tools are a little cheap, but we're making progress. We're getting there. In the process of adjusting the brake levers, I decided to also tilt the button pad back a little bit, because my hands are here and my thumb wants to be down a little bit. But I was twisting this, and I noticed this wire used to be clipped to the motor inhibitor from the brake lever, and it was really tight. So I would recommend just take your time with this stuff. If you're forcing something, double check the wires, make sure everything looks good. This one's kind of extra loose. You might be able to zip tie this together, but then again, if you're tilting that display panel, it could pull on the wire too. So there's more to keep track of with an electric bike, more wires floating around, and these wire wraps are nice and everything's good, but same thing, if you turn too far, sometimes the cables can get pulled. In this case, it looks like they're doing all right, but the headlight especially, look down there, there's tiny little wires. You don't want to pull those. Even when I was unwrapping the bike earlier, all the plastic bubble wrap and everything. Okay, since it's dark now, I thought this would be a good chance to just show you the backlighting on the display. Love that there's an independent light button. Just hold that for a couple seconds. It turns on the headlight as well as backlighting on the display. This is fairly bright. When I was riding along, it was a little bit distracting. I'm going to try to go into the settings and adjust that later. It's also in kilometers per hour right now. Interesting, there's no throttle, and it does use a torque sensing pedal assist, so it's pretty natural. It's smooth. You can just cruise around with the headlight. Because it's got this overlapping clear portion on the front, you do get good visibility from the side as well as the top. So I found that when I was riding and the display blocked the light, that's nice, but if I stood up, it would shine in my eyes a little bit like that. So it's, it is aimable. You can adjust this to be more downward if you want. Hopefully you can see that here. Just cruising along. There's the display, pretty bright. And that can be angled again to cut down. Now we're in a section of the street with a street light, but you can still see the pattern a little bit. See it emerging up there? There we go. The camera is just adjusting. I really like it. And even though the suspension, I'm getting this more of a popping feeling. It's not quite as smooth and fluid, some of the nicer forks. It's still there. It definitely takes the edge off of the big bumps. There we go. So close up again. Spinninga Micro LED. It does have a reflector. And I suppose you could take this off if you wanted, but I'm not sure. If you just disconnect the leads, they might just be hanging out. It's another thing that could rattle around, kind of like the kickstand. Although I must say, it's nice that the kickstand is out of the way so that you can pedal freely, or when you walk backwards, see how it turns the cranks, then they don't collide with the kickstand. It made it easy for me to do service earlier. So far the brakes are not super impressive. I'm having to squeeze a little bit harder and use the whole lever, 3 or 4 fingers. Okay, bright and early, getting ready to hit the trails. I thought I would show you, my other mountain bike. This is an unpowered Specialized stump jumper back here, just next to the Enduro, so you could get an idea of how the geometry differs a little bit. I would definitely call this more of a cross-country bike. You can see that the wheelbase is actually a bit longer. When you extend the rear wheel, you can't turn as quickly, and the bike just doesn't feel as nimble. On the stump jumper, they've actually angled the fork a little bit more, so you're going to be able to absorb those hits, and this is what I was talking about. Look at those thicker stanchions, much more adjustability up there on the clickers. You've got through axles. It's just a sturdier bike. That's the platform that Specialized based their Turbo Levo series off of. So, I feel like I've tried the Levo. I've actually owned one, and it performs really well. It also uses a mid-drive motor that I think is zippier. The suspension design over here is the 4-bar horse link versus this one. This has like a perpendicular suspension and more of a generic design there. I guess a lot to think about in terms of, the mountain biking body position. If you look at the stem over there, that you see that little piece that puts the handlebars out, basically this piece. This one's a lot longer, and the reach just seems unnecessarily long to me. I don't really like that. I would bring it back a little bit. The rise on the bars is nice, kind of brings it up a little bit, and it protects that display if you do end up going down and the bike takes a tumble, or you go over the handlebars or something like that, which, it's a heavier bike. I have a feeling you're going to be skidding a little bit more and sliding onto your side versus flipping, just because the brakes on this, they're not hydraulic brakes, and they don't have the larger rotors. I believe this is an 1.1 straight steering tube versus this one. It's a little bit tapered, 1.1 to 1.5 inches. So you're actually getting a lot of strength, even though it looks shorter. That one has the plus size tires, so even though it's 27.5 diameter, you're actually getting a larger functional diameter, the outside of the tire, versus this one, it's just not as thick, 27.5 by 2.1. And then I thought this would be a good opportunity to explore the display panel a little bit more. This is the Bafang DPC-10. We hold the power button for just a second, turns right on. You don't have to press this little power button down here, although that is going to give you some feedback. It's got a little 4 LED charge level indicator, which is really nice. Anyway, it's on. We got 10 bars over here. That's really nice versus just 5 bars, 10% increments, a little bit finer. Speed, it's currently set to miles per hour. I'll explain how to do that in a moment. Trip distance down here, you can cycle through different menus using I. So we've got total distance, max speed, average speed, then back to trip, so it cycles through. Then we've got 5 different levels of assist. You can plus or minus to go through those. You can completely turn it off if you want to, but otherwise go all the way up to 5. I've been using it at max power and it hasn't been overwhelming. It doesn't quite have that zip feeling that Bosch does, or the Brose motor, or Yamaha for that matter. It's quiet, and apparently it's supposed to put out 80 Newton meters of torque, which is impressive on paper. We'll see how it does on the trail. I like that this pivots, reduce glare. It's not removable like some of the other display panels. It's pretty compact looking at it from the front. I think it gets the job done. And some of these were supposed to have USB charging ports, I thought, but I've been looking around and I'm not seeing anything like that. Okay, well, chime in if you see that. This might actually be a variant of the DPC-10. There's definitely a USB charging port down here, 5 volts, 2 amps, and since it's standard size, you don't have to get like a bunch of funky adapters, and you could charge like an iOS device, which requires at least an amp. So that's kind of cool. And online, you can get these cool right angle adapters. So this is sort of out of the way of your pedals, but it's still kind of right there. If you stood up, you wouldn't want to bump that. So yeah, check out those right angle dongles or adapters on like Amazon. Okay, so settings. This is a really interesting part of the display. A lot of displays you hold plus and minus, or you do some funky stuff. On this one, you just double tap I. Tap, tap, like that. The first menu here, TC, that stands for trip clear. So do you want to clear out your stats? So yeah, I'm going to do that. So I hit plus, yes. Okay, on to the next thing, I. Here, this is asking us if we want to change from miles per hour to kilometers per hour. No, I want to keep that, so I just hit I. This next one, BLO, it's like backlight sensor, so how sensitive do you want the backlight to be to automatically turn on is how I'm interpreting that. That might be this little sensor underneath the display. So unfortunately, it sounds like, I was excited. Cool, you can completely turn off the backlighting. Should have tested that a little bit more. But maybe you completely can by putting it all the way down. And then backlight 1, this is actually how bright the backlighting is. And that's pretty cool because you can dim it out if you want to. And then screen auto time off. Maintenance reminder. 0 equals off, 1 equals on. SB, this is like the password. And I have here that 0512 might be the password. Okay, 1, 2. Okay, cool. Wheel diameter, 27.5, cool. That's what we wanted. Speed limit, 25 kilometers per hour. So here I can raise that, depending on where you're riding. This bike came set up at 25 kilometers per hour, which is 15.5 miles per hour. And since we're in the United States, if I want to be class 1, I'm going to set this at 32 kilometers per hour right now in the display panel. So I'm here back at speed. It's at 60, just for fun, testing that out. I got up to about 28 miles per hour. Take this down to 32 because that is the 20 mile per hour mark. That's going to be legal on the trails. Awesome. I'm kind of excited about this. And then this last one, I don't know, it seems to have like degrees, like temperature. I'm not as familiar with that. Okay, voltage, amps, it looks like. There really wasn't a great manual online, and this didn't come with a manual. and we're back to backlighting and stuff. So now I'm just going to double tap and we're back to the main menu. Okay, we're getting ready to go for a ride and the bike is on my rack. I thought this would be a cool opportunity to just get close-ups and, you know, have kind of a level view. This is where the battery seats. It's really nice. It's partially inside the down tube, which brings that weight low in center along with the motor. It's about 7 pounds on that battery. The bike total with the battery and everything is about 55.7 pounds, so they're pretty accurate on the website, which I always appreciate. I mentioned this before, but I love where the kickstand's mounted. It's out of the way of the disc brake rotor, but also your pedals if you're pedaling backwards. We've got the suspension set up here. Of course, the suspension fork. You can see the light and everything. The wheel size mentioned earlier. This is 650B, 27.5 by 2.10. So they're definitely not plus size tires, but they give you enough traction. We'll see how they hold up on the trail, these little knobs. Longer head tube, should be stiff, but I believe it's just straight. It's not tapered. I got the brake levers and everything angled before. Just be careful with that hardware. It'd be easy to strip with the tools they give you. I was able to get this wire out of the way so that the bell sort of works, but it also touches, and it was tacked here before with a zip tie and it was pulling. So just spend some time, be careful with that stuff. Got the drivetrain all looped up. We've got an anti-rust chain, KMCZ chain there, 160 millimeter Tektro Novella, mechanical disc brakes. Not ideal for a heavier bike in off-road settings where you're really going to be going downhill, but it stopped well enough on the pavement. I weigh about 135 pounds. I'm 5'9", so it's not, you know, it's not too much to stop me. The real complaint is just that seat post length, 200 millimeters versus 350 on a lot of others, because that bend in the frame. And that's where I have a feeling I'm going to be standing up more and just not getting full leg extension, which can cause some knee sensitivity. But of course, with the motor help, maybe that's not such a big deal. 170 millimeter alloy cranks. These are Bafang cranks or 8 cage style pedals, Welgo. Let's see what else we got here. Reflectors built in, no rear light, something you could add aftermarket. And then a rack. You know, some people want to use this for commuting and potentially dial it up to a speed pedelec using the display settings and stuff. You could do a beam rack, but they get knocked side to side. So Thule has the pack and pedal rack, which might work. Of course, it's going to be bouncing your cargo up and down, and then just a little bit of a limited range on that cassette in the back. Do love that they have a slap guard though, and then this bash guard, so it kind of keep your pants from snagging as much or getting quite as greasy. There's no chain cover, but yeah, if you hit a rock or something in the front, that does drop a little bit lower than the mid-drive motor, which has a pretty sturdy, you know, it's plastic on this side, but alloy liner on the bottom there. Feels pretty good. Meeting some friendly out-of-staters here, going for a ride as well with the helmet cam. And we're about ready to go. Excited to check this thing out. I noticed that the battery is a little tighter than on some of the older VoltBike models that I've tested. Maybe the Yukon. It wasn't terrible, but it's nice to have that. I've also got my GPS here so we can track performance. This is a steeper climb. This is called Towers. It's got this access road, so I feel a little bit more comfortable riding it. There we go. And we're off. Okay, hopefully get this thing going. There we go. I think we're all set. Let's enjoy it. I do have it set in the 20 mile per hour top speed mode right now to comply with Class 1 e-bike legislation. I think we're all good. Beautiful day for this. A little above 20 there, going downhill. I'm definitely feeling squished not getting the kind of leg extension I'd like. But that's an easy fix. Shifting down. Howdy. The speed on this bike does seem to be very dependent on the gear you've chosen. If you're in a low gear, you're just not going to get, you know, that's true of most mid drives, but you're not going to get the speed. Here we go. This is where the climbing starts. Just a little bit. It really feels more like a hardtail right now. And I suppose I could lower that rear suspension, but I don't want to bottom out. I don't want to blow that suspension. So I feel like maybe it just has a smaller air chamber. There's not as much room for really adjusting it, and I'm not a professional mechanic, so okay. Pretty good climbing power right now. 10 miles per hour up what is clearly pretty steep section. Still going. Okay, great. This is excellent performance, I would say. This would be a killer on a regular bike. There's no way you could be doing 10 miles per hour uphill like this. The parking lot was down back this way, but it was near the water. It was almost at that level, so we've already come from way over there. Doing great. Another steep section. So far I haven't had to get out of the saddle at all. I am shifting down this time. You can hear me breathing probably. You still get a cardio workout. I'm feeling my muscles, but maintaining a healthy speed. Drops like 8 miles per hour, 8 or 9. I'm gonna shift down a little bit more. Okay, I'm in my lowest gear right now for climbing. Doing great. Look at that. This is where my friend wiped out once. She was looking at the view. Behind us is a great view of Horsetooth Lake in Fort Collins, Colorado, and got a little distracted and skidded out. Looks like someone else did similar. This will be interesting to come down on with those mechanical disc brakes. Very nice. Still shows 100% battery. Went all the way up there. Down to like 7 miles per hour. The motor is very quiet. It's one of the quietest motors I think I've tested. Comparable to the Broza motor. There we go. I'm up in 3. Shifting back down. This bike needs a bit of a tune-up. Gears aren't shifting perfectly. That's the kind of thing I'd recommend for any, order by mail type of bike. If you buy online, good to take it to a shop, get a little bit of help tuning it up, maybe even fitting you. Perhaps they carry that seat post upgrade I was talking about. And actually, a suspension seat post might not be a bad idea for a bike like this, just because that rear suspension it's just not that much travel. Hey. We're just killing it out here. Oh yeah. Loving it. I was talking to those folks at the parking lot. They knew what an e-bike was. They were like, oh, we're kind of jealous. Because this trail, it's a killer. Super steep, not a lot of switchbacks. Again, access road, wider. Cars come up this to make repairs and stuff to the radio tower. That's why it's called towers. But they knew what an e-bike was. They weren't aggro. They didn't care. They were like, cool, you know, show us your bike. It's great. You know, I explained that I've got into this because of a knee injury. Look at this, it's not ripping up the trail. Even if I had this set to go 28 miles per hour, I don't think I could uphill. So downhill, anyone can go that fast or faster, coasting. So anyway, just neat to see that gaining acceptance. Suspension's definitely doing a job. Wow. We'll make it up to this next turn and we'll call it a ride. So I don't want to take forever on this video for you. Spend that extra time actually going out and taking a ride yourself. Yeah. Look at this. Came from down there, way down there. What feels like 10 minutes ago or something. Not very long. Yeah. There we go. Oh boy. We were literally at water level, down by those houses. And now look at the view. Spectacular. Still looks brand new. So one of the considerations with any e-bike at this stage at least is that it's just so heavy that on the way down, braking is going to be a consideration, and jumping and tossing the bike around, you really can't. It's not the same. I find myself like you try to like bunny hop and you just it's a different type of riding. You kind of got to get used to it, but the weight balance has been really good. Yeah, it's feeling excellent. Okay, you guys, I think I'm gonna put a frame camera on. We'll go down and test out the suspension a little bit. Okay guys, front and center, you should be able to see the suspension as well as the braking and just get an idea for how the trail's working. And I'll have a camera up here as well.
taking it all the way up to the max speed, using the display that we unlocked a second ago, and riding it around on pavement. I think that's going to give you a better idea of how the motor sounds. You can get a feel for the RPM. I was able to hit about 28 miles per hour on this thing, so technically it can be unlocked and become a speed pedelec. And I think that works really well just with the geometry of the frame, even the tires, the higher PSI, and the suspension that's a little stiffer. This would be a really fun bike to ride around town. Unfortunately, it doesn't have fender bosses. There aren't rack bosses. You can get this like pack and pedal rack from Thule. It's pretty expensive, and it would sort of mount on the rear swing arms. You could get normal, just a backpack, I suppose. But there's no bottle cage. That's one thing that's missing on this bike as well, because it's full suspension. So keep that in mind if you were going to try to use this as a platform. I like that at least it has that kickstand. So let's do a little ride. Not bad. We didn't quite hit 28 there. Part of that's because I'm not in the highest gear. I'm in the second to highest gear. You actually need to shift. This does have a more limited RPM. So, I was basically maxing out and the motor wasn't helping as much. I think it's geared for lower end torque. Those 80 Newton meters we talked about. From here you can see the derailleur. Again, it's a little upgrade from the tourney, but we're working with those 8 gears. I noticed how tight this cable was. It just feels like it doesn't have enough length. There's enough cable, I suppose, just the wrap. It's really tight right here, and considering that this is rear suspension, it can be going up and down. When I was in the lowest gear, this big sprocket out here, was just really tightly stretched. So I guess keep an eye on that, or maybe that's some feedback for them. No shift sensing here, so it is possible to kind of like kunk, really, pushing on that thing. But because it's a torque sensing mid-drive, I feel like you can ease off a little bit. Just give it a bit more time. You saw a minute ago when I was pedaling, starting and stopping, that the motor just takes a half a second to ease off. Smooth and steady braking. Oh, don't want to slide. You can hop it a little bit if you work with the momentum of the bike. Howdy. Yeah, you can feel the weight. You can feel the battery bouncing a little bit. Woo, got some air. That felt pretty awesome. Yeah, it's doing pretty well. Yeah. Woo! Oh yeah. There's our friends from the parking lot. Hey guys. Friendly.
It's awesome. There's that killer view. And brake in advance before you turn. Take it easy. Yep. There we go. Woo. Howdy. Yeah. Oh yeah. Let me give those brakes a rest here just to cool off. Just so fast going down. Oh man. Let's get it. There we go. Yeah, there we go. Back to pedaling, and there it is, kicks right in, up to 20. That's awesome. This bike is actually, you know, I mentioned cross country before. That's this type of riding where it's like rolling, a little bit less steep, maybe not as many rocks. You're just having fun flowing. Yeah. And I think I could still feel that battery. There's a little bit of rattle maybe. Just the weight of the frame. It's not real flexy though. I'm not feeling it flex. I think because of the battery and motor position. The bird. Here's our cut. I'm in a higher gear now, so I'm getting motor assistance, level 5, but you know, it's having to work harder, so it's slower to get me up to speed. There we go. Hey guys, thank you. Woo. Oh yeah, oh, jump. Oh, rad. Get some little hops. I'm in the highest gear right now, and you know, I've got a slow, steady cadence, and I was above 20, so I guess what I was trying to do is test the range, that gear range. It does seem capable because I was able to climb some pretty steep sections and maintain, if not beat, 20 miles per hour. I think that's about it, guys. Wow. Beautiful area. It's just so nice to get outside. Well guys, that's it. I hope you've enjoyed this. This is the VoltBike Enduro. For the full specs, all the little details, measurements, standover height, and all that, I'll see you back at ElectricBikeReview.com. Of course, be respectful. People are friendly. I've had no problem today. It's never been my experience where someone's like, what the heck? You know, people are understanding if you're following the rules, you're careful with the braking, you're thoughtful when you pass. I had a blast today. I hope you did too. I'll see you next time. Ride safe.